April 1942. The world was still reeling from the swift, brutal expansion of the Japanese Empire. Pearl Harbor was a devastating blow, followed by a relentless cascade of victories across the Pacific. Singapore had fallen, the Philippines were lost, Japan seemed invincible, a military force that moved with impossible speed and efficiency. Even within Japan, there were voices of caution. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack, understood the immense industrial power of the United States. He knew that Japan's initial victories were only a prelude. He believed Japan had a small window, perhaps 18 months, to secure a peace favorable to them before America's industrial might fully mobilized. But his warnings were often drowned out by the fervor of nationalist ambition.
The narrative pushed by Tokyo was clear. America was decadent, soft, easily intimidated, a nation incapable of sustaining a long, arduous war. But in the face of overwhelming defeat, a desperate plan was hatched, a plan so audacious, so unprecedented, it would force Japan to confront a terrifying new reality. America wasn't just fighting back. America was just getting started. April 18, 1942. The United States Navy, still stunned by the ambush at Pearl Harbor, is on the defensive. Their battleships lie wrecked, their carriers are a constant, elusive target. And then something impossible happens. For the first time in naval history, Army bombers, aircraft designed to take off from solid ground, are launched from the deck of an aircraft carrier, the USS Hornet, hundreds of miles off the coast of Japan. Their target? Not a distant naval base, not a remote island, but the very heart of the Japanese Empire, Tokyo, a nation that had never known enemy bombs on its home soil. This wasn't just a bombing raid. It was a declaration, a message delivered with roaring engines and falling bombs. We can reach you, we can strike you, and this is just the beginning. This was the Doolittle raid. It would sow confusion, fear, and a chilling realization in the minds of Japanese leaders. The war in the Pacific had begun with a series of devastating Japanese successes. The swift fall of fortifications in the Philippines, the rapid conquest of Malaya, the shocking surrender of Singapore. These events painted a picture of Japanese invincibility. The meticulous planning and swift execution of the Pearl Harbor attack had crippled the U.S. Pacific Fleet, removing the primary obstacle to Japan's imperial ambitions. Even in the Philippines, where American and Filipino forces fought fiercely, the tide was turning against them. The fall of Corregidor was inevitable. The Japanese narrative of invincibility was gaining traction, even amongst those who had previously harbored doubts.
Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, was deeply concerned. While he understood the need for a swift, decisive blow, he also recognized the long-term implications of a war against the industrial titans of the United States and Great Britain. He saw a brief window, perhaps 18 months, to achieve an negotiated peace before America's vast industrial capacity could be fully mobilized. He knew that continued aggressive expansion, while militarily successful in the short term, would eventually lead to a war Japan could not win. The core of American naval power, its aircraft carriers, had miraculously escaped the destruction of Pearl Harbor. But even these vital assets were stretched thin, operating at the mercy of distance and Japan's expanding reach. The idea of launching a direct strike against the Japanese homeland seemed like a fantasy, an impossible feat given the limitations of American resources in early 1942. The concept that emerged was born of desperation and daring. The United States Army Air Corps possessed the B-25 Mitchell bomber, a robust medium bomber capable of significant payload. But these planes were designed for land bases, far from the reach of carriers. The Navy, on the other hand, had the mobility. The USS Hornet, a relatively new aircraft carrier, became the unlikely platform for a mission that defied conventional military wisdom. The idea was simple, yet terrifyingly complex. Load as many B-25s as possible onto the Hornet, sail them within striking distance of Japan, launch them, and have them bomb military targets in Tokyo and surrounding cities. The challenge was immense. The B-25s were heavier and larger than the Navy's carrier-based fighters. Launching them from a moving deck with minimal space and rough seas was a feat never before attempted. The man tasked with leading this unprecedented mission was Lieutenant Colonel James "Jimmy" Doolittle. A decorated aviator and engineer, Doolittle was known for his courage and for his ability to inspire. He selected 24 B-25 crews, men who volunteered for a mission with an incredibly high risk and an uncertain outcome. The crews underwent intense secret training, pushing the limits of what was thought possible for both the aircraft and the pilots. The crews knew their mission was likely one way. There would be no return to the Hornet. Their flight path would take them over Japan and, hopefully, towards friendly territory in China. Survival was not guaranteed, but the objective was clear: to strike the enemy's homeland and deliver a psychological blow.
Each takeoff was a triumph of engineering and bravery, the planes clearing the deck by mere feet. Once airborne, they formed up, their mission etched in their minds. Bomb Japan. The bombers attacked targets of military significance, industrial areas, oil storage facilities, shipyards. While the military damage was relatively minor, the symbolic impact was colossal. For the first time, the Japanese people and their leadership heard the sound of American bombs falling on their homeland. The psychological shockwave that rippled through Japan was immense. Propaganda had promised invincibility. It had painted the Americans as soft, weak, easily defeated. But the sight of American bombers overhead, appearing as if from nowhere, shattered that illusion. The question echoed through government halls. How could this have happened? How could the Americans reach us? The Doolittle raid forced a brutal reevaluation within the Japanese high command. Admiral Yamamoto's concerns, once dismissed by some as pessimism, now seemed prescient. The attack, though militarily inconsequential, proved that America possessed the reach and the resolve to strike out the Japanese mainland. For a nation that had built its strategy on carrier-based power, the idea of land-based bombers being launched from a carrier was deeply unsettling. It demonstrated an adaptability and a disregard for convention that the Japanese military, known for its rigid adherence to doctrine, found difficult to comprehend. The Doolittle raid forced Japan to divert resources and attention to homeland defense. This meant fewer resources could be allocated to their aggressive, expansionist plans in the South Pacific. The raid also played a critical role in Admiral Yamamoto's strategic thinking. He saw the need for a decisive naval victory, one that would cripple the U.S. carrier fleet and force them to the negotiating table. His answer would be a daring operation to seize Midway Atoll. The raid directly influenced Yamamoto's decision to launch the Midway offensive. He needed to neutralize the U.S. carriers that posed such a threat. He believed that if he could destroy the U.S. carrier force, Japan would achieve the overwhelming victory necessary to secure a peace treaty on its own terms. The Doolittle raid, in its own way, was a catalyst for that fateful encounter. The physical cost of the Doolittle raid was significant for the American crews. Many planes were lost, and several crews were captured by the Japanese, facing harsh treatment and even execution. Yet, their sacrifice was not in vain. The raid proved that America, despite its early setbacks, possessed the ingenuity, the courage, and the industrial capacity to project power anywhere, at any time. It was a stark reminder to Japan that the war was far from over. While Japan had achieved stunning initial victories, America's vast industrial engine was just beginning to turn. The Doolittle raid was the first tremor, a sign of the earthquake to come. It proved that America's capacity for production and innovation was a force that could not be underestimated.
While the Doolittle bonnet inflicted little lasting material damage, they delivered a devastating psychological blow. They revealed to Japan that America was not a nation to be intimidated, but a nation that, when provoked, could unleash its immense power in ways the world had never seen. They had believed America was already fighting its last gasp. The Doolittle raid showed them it was merely the opening act. The Doolittle raid was more than just a military operation. It was a statement of intent. It was a defiant roar from a nation that had been attacked, a promise that retribution would come not just with force, but with overwhelming ingenuity and industrial might. It signaled through Japan and to the world that the sleeping giant had not only awakened, but was beginning its relentless ascent. The raid that struck Tokyo was the first shot heard around the world, a prelude to the ultimate realization that America's capacity to fight and to win was only just beginning. The Doolittle raid proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, audacious action and industrial power could change the course of a war. What do you think was the most impactful aspect of this raid? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to discover more pivotal moments that shaped history, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.